All right, I think we
Hi.
are live and kicking, right, Chris? Are we
Yes,
live?
sir.
Everything's live.
We are
Everything's
I mean,
happening.
I'm pretty sure I could always double check. Yeah, looks good. Looks
Okay.
good. Yeah, looks great.
All right. So, hello, everybody. Hi, Chris.
Hello,
Hi,
guys.
Seth.
Hey guys.
Yes. Hello, everyone who's listening, watching. If you're here for the first time, welcome to the Great Transition. If you're here not for the first time, then also welcome to the Great Transition. We are generally aiming to be welcoming as much as we can, especially in these crazy times the world is going through. That's really what our show here is about. It's about the crazy times this world is going through. We're looking at it from a Kabbalistic perspective and trying to get a deeper understanding and context of the entire process that the human family is going through and what exactly is culminating in our time that we refer to as a great transition. So if you look at the world, at mankind, at human evolution, social evolution, you think about everything that we're going through in this world, right? If you think about the entire 200,000 years or so of human evolution, we've gone through so much and so far in how we've developed technologies and tools and language and communication systems, information systems, and we moved from through and from into different forms of social regimes and social formations, and we built cities and moved from villages to cities and then into bigger cities, and then created all kinds of technology that connects us, like trade and commerce and transportation and information and media, and all of that gigantic experiment of evolution from a Kabbalistic perspective is not what we think at all. This isn't a material world that we are in, and we are not material bits of material stuff that is evolving. From a Kabbalistic perspective, there's only a single consciousness that is evolving. That is the one thing that exists and is dynamically evolving and producing a different picture of reality. Now, Kabbalists don't really use the word consciousness, they use the word vessel. And a vessel means that which holds everything that we experience, everything that is to be experienced, including everything that we refer to as a conscious experience. Kabbalists are the scientists of consciousness. They are the scientists of the vessel that holds any conscious experience that we may experience. And they describe the structure and the evolution of consciousness in tremendously great detail. They describe every degree of consciousness as built from the two most polar opposites you can think of. That is referred to in Kabbalah as Keter and Malchut. There are two opposites, sort of like the imagine the most extreme idea you can think of as plus and minus, the most extreme polar oppositeness. That polar oppositeness, these two opposite qualities, form the basis that creates consciousness. Every
Just
degree
because
of
just
consciousness.
because
Yeah.
I'm a simple person, I just want to understand here for a second. You say that
Oh
the
wow.
spiritual
That's a good sign if you stop me now, because I
the
just
spirit
started
the
and I don't know
spirit
where it's
just
going.
no
Yeah.
no we're going to keep going. I just want to be really clear
Hmm.
because you touched on something important.
Hmm.
The spiritual structure is made of two opposing forces.
Yes.
Okay, because I just thought that everything in this world was opposing, but in spirituality, everything was going to be okay. So okay, keep going. I just
You're
wanted to be
right.
clear about that.
You're right. We
Okay,
need to.
I
We
don't want
need
to
to.
stop you. I don't want to
No,
stop
no,
you. I
but
just
you're
wanted to be
right.
clear about that.
We need to continue with this all the way into what our world is. I'll get there in a minute together with you guys. Every degree of consciousness is built from these two polar opposites. The distance, they're described as Keter and Malchut. And every degree of consciousness, every level of consciousness has to have these two opposites. And the distance between these opposites, and you're right, we should keep mentioning it. We're not talking about physical distance. We're not talking about physical qualities. We're not talking about time and space in our perception of the 3D material world that is around us. We're talking about a difference of qualities. We're talking about qualities of qualities and frequencies of relationship. And this relationship between the Keter and Malchut creates what we call a vessel, the vessel of experience, the perceiver, that which holds any conscious experience. The distance between this Keter and Malchut, these 2 points that make up the volume of the vessel, the distance between them is described as an additional 8 qualities in between the Keter and Malchut, and altogether they make up 10 qualities or 10 dimensions of the vessel that experiences reality. And altogether, there are 125 degrees that this vessel made up of 10 qualities goes through. Now, Kabbalists mapped out all of that in, again, I say to those who don't know, in great detail. We're talking thousands of pages of very precise detail that does not come from someone's theoretical idea about what life is and what reality is, but from empirical observation. How is that possible? It's possible because the only thing that exists according to Kabbalah, and the only thing that Kabbalists deal with, is their own vessel of perception. And from that perspective,
so just say, for example, or for a minute, the difference between what is philosophy and what is the difference between Kabbalah or science?
Sure.
Okay.
So in philosophy,
so hold on. When I ask you these questions, though, I don't want to derail you. I just want to clarify a point and keep going. Okay.
Okay, I'll do my best to work here with the pace that that we're working with here. The philosophy is basically the practice of using our thoughts, our imagination, relying heavily on our imagination and logic, which is, by the way, a subset of our imagination. There's nothing, logic is simply another aspect of human imagination. So it's dealing just with that in order to think about what reality is. Empiricism is completely
Kabbalah, science.
Exactly. Science and Kabbalah rely heavily on empiricism, which means coming to actual findings that you can measure.
So there's a big difference between philosophy
yes.
and the wisdom of
science
Kabbalah
and Kabbalah. Yes.
Okay, got it.
And Kabbalists are the scientists. They're literally the scientists of human perception. They are the scientists of the conscious experience of the human vessel. That's what they do. That's the only thing they do. They research how our vessel is built, how we perceive reality, and what they found. And that's the big difference between Kabbalists and any other kind of scientists. What they found is that if you can calibrate your vessel, and again, I say they found it as in discovered it, as in attained it, as in measured it, as in felt it, and wrote about it, not theorized about it. They found that if you can calibrate your vessel a little differently, then you can perceive the same reality that we're in right now differently, in a deeper level, on a deeper layer. And
what makes it scientific is that if somebody else follows their experiment, they'll also arrive at the same attainment, the same conclusions.
And that's what, for those who may be watching this for the first time or something, that's what a bunch of us, a few thousand people all around the world, all together, are doing on a regular basis in a very rigorous, empirical way. The whole practice is really finding other bits of consciousness, if you will, that are inside. You find them while you're in the illusion of this material world, and together with them, we're working on consciously connecting these bits of consciousness. Now, that's a whole technology and methodology, and it requires a lot of practice. But what it is essentially is just working on connecting these conscious sparks within us to the point that we begin to feel that shared consciousness that we're all part of. And when you begin to do that, you begin to see reality from a deeper vantage point. And it doesn't mean that this reality goes away. It doesn't mean that suddenly people don't exist, trees disappear, and everything is not there. It's just not, it doesn't end there. You're beginning to see that everything behind this so-called material picture of the world
this is yeah. I got a question this morning from on one of the forums for KabU. Someone was asking something like this because, okay, everything is inside of me, but I see a lot of things outside of me. So if I see something outside of me, but it's really inside of me, so it's not, there's got to be more to the story. You talked about there's Keter and there's Malchut, and then there's these 8 dimensions in between. And then there's also this process of 125 degrees, because it's not just one and done, or like Rabash talks in his articles, the digging of the well doesn't happen all at once. It's like these processes. So, okay, so the Keter is to say everything's inside of me. It's not like, here, everything's inside, you put it in your pocket, that's the end of the story. The Keter is the whole reality is one. The Malchut would be, I see a bunch of stuff happening in this world that is very separate. And then there's this whole system in between. So we don't, it's a really important point.
Yeah.
When you're hearing this, that you have to take what you're hearing and put it in the right place. That's kind of what happens in the science. If you have hydrogen and oxygen, that's fine. Water's hydrogen and oxygen. Great. I take hydrogen and oxygen, I throw them together, nothing's happening. You have to arrange everything also. It's not just enough to have the pieces.
In a specific configuration. Yeah, in a specific configuration. Our world, and if we were going to go into that language even more, then our world, our experience of the material world is referred to by Kabbalists as the very last degree of the most limited, the most finite, the most reduced level of consciousness that exists. It's referred to by Kabbalists as Malchut of Malchut of Malchut of Asiya, which basically, if you divide all of our vessel into 5 big layers, they would be called Adam Kadmon, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. 5 levels of consciousness. Kabbalists call them levels of concealment. Why? Because all of reality is one thing, one being, one vessel, one consciousness. But you can perceive it on different levels. You can perceive more of it or less of it. And we begin our journey from the very superficial, outermost, thinnest layer of perception. That is referred to as Malchut of Malchut of Malchut of Asiya. And all of human development that we see and discuss and experience is only judged from that layer of perception. It's like we're seeing only the the outside superficial symbolic shapes and layers of the deeper code. We're not seeing the deeper code of what's actually happening, the program that determines the evolution of consciousness. Where do
okay, you said like 10 times. You said like 10 times. Well, not 10 times. It's just you always round up, right? Mom, you said 20 times. Where everything is one. That's what you said. You kept saying everything is one. But then, okay, there's that reality where maybe whatever I can try to imagine. Why do I look so blue? You could try to imagine.
No, it's good. It's good.
It's the extra. Okay, let's do that.
Noticing the blue sweatshirt and the blue light.
That's new. It's comfortable. Yeah. Everything is one. That's one thing. Then, but at the same time, we come back to our world. Everyone has their job, their family. Right. They've got all kinds of different calculations throughout the day. First of all, that thought is not even something probably that comes into their mind. But then you have these big events that kind of that show us even more that not one. And in the case of Russia, Ukraine, the West, the Euro-Asia or the Euro-West or the Euro-Western policies and all these connections, it's split. There's divisions. We always talked about the left and the right. And so now you've got this really hot topic that's coming up, all over the news. If you were, not living under a rock, then you know that Russia wants to take Ukraine, wants to invade Ukraine, wants to return their control maybe over, or their influence over Ukraine. For a while there was some issues. I don't know, maybe there's this slogan of like Nova Russia, which is like new Russia, where they want to continue and expand and have this influence. And Russia's okay. So here the issue is really, should the West get involved? Because does the West want Russia to continue to expand? We're not saying Russia's doing a good thing or doing a bad thing. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Can you see the screen? Can you see the map here? So
yeah.
Can you see this? So yeah, it's actually very interesting, and I'm not going to like hypothesize or theorize or philosophize about it, but the Ukraine is this area right here, okay, and this is Russia,
right?
This is Europe. So Ukraine is so at one point when it was the USSR, this was all part of Russia, but then this part now is autonomous. So the Ukraine is really now between Europe and Russia, and
not even geographically only. They also have economic ties with Europeans, and also have there's a bunch of problems there.
So
yeah, exactly
the oil coming into Russian oil going into Europe, Russian oil going into
right
Europe
through
is coming through Ukraine, right? So it's
super strategic.
So yeah, it's so interesting.
Very strategic.
Actually, listening to your whole intro, and then seeing what's happening here. Like, I'm not saying Russia is Keter and the West is Europe is Malchut, but just to see the pattern again and again is so interesting. So Russia knows that if the Ukraine becomes okay, so let me show you the map one more time, just to just kind of complicate the story a little bit and just paint a good picture here. So down here, this is everyone may or may not know, this is called Crimea, which Russia took over. So it's definitely a part of the Ukraine. Russia's over. Well,
not even too long ago either. It's almost like this extended process that's just continuing.
Right. So Russia needs, wants to have military in the Black Sea, so they took over that. And then this eastern region right here kind of has Russian culture It's called the Donbass region. So it's like
Right.
Russian speaking people, and it's close to Russia. So it's
And
so
those are the
funny how
supporters.
all
It happens to be supporters. There are people who are within Ukraine and they support what Russia's doing as well. They
so
they're
Russia says
they're yeah.
is Russia says have democratic elections, have these local democratic elections, and then we can then we can have a ceasefire. Then we can make a treaty after you do democratic elections. Ukraine says, well, Ukraine doesn't want to allow a democratic election there because the people in the east
They know.
of the Ukraine would vote for the pro Russian side. So
Right.
the Ukraine can't um, fight against Russia without the West's support. Without NATO is kind of this organization of like Western European nations, include, and then Russia's on the other side. So to make it just a little bit more complicated, and here's something also super interesting about the whole thing. Suppose you have some very young, progressive people, and they say, we want to get off oil, right? We're done with these old timers polluting our planet, right? We want to
Okay.
be carbon free. Now, Germany, always a history, or in recent history, Germany is always a very progressive, very intelligent, really smart people, great engineers. Okay, this is just, I guess, who they are somehow as people. Um, they decided that within 20 years they want to be 80% off of carbon emitting fuels. Okay, so they're cutting down their carbon emission. But because of that, because so you have, so just think about it. You're super progressive, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, we're going to cut emissions, right? So you start retooling your country. It takes time. Okay. In the meantime, you need to import gas. So Germany now has to import like 80, 90% of its gas because it
Right.
doesn't have it domestically. It's not focusing
Yeah.
on it domestically. So that means that countries like Russia, whether Trump says that Germany imports 80%, another organization says Germany only imports 30%, but Russia supplies a significant amount of of fuel to a country like Germany, who's a part of NATO. So it's everything, and so that happened because
The
very
plot
progressive.
thickens.
Yeah, very,
So
very
thick.
progressive
So
people who
thick.
said they want to, we want to save the environment. We want to save the world. So we start making policies and implementing policies to save the world, which makes us dependent on Russian oil, which means that the US or the NATO
Yeah.
can't, so everything
Mm.
It-
becomes so,
it's
the
as
creator,
you're
as we call it,
explaining it,
mixes everything so tightly.
as you're explaining it, I'm imagining like this how do you say it correctly in English? Like the ball of cotton wool, maybe, that you like throw
Yeah,
to one
yeah.
person and then to another person, and then like you just keep
Yes.
throwing it between
Yes.
people.
And even when
And
you have good
after a
intentions,
while,
let's
it
save
doesn't
the
matter even what intentions you have. As long as you're throwing it to the other one, a connection is being made. And then that person throws it to another
Ah,
one and
right.
another connection is being
Ball of
made. But
yarn. Yeah.
it's already the ball of yarn. There you go. Thank you. Yeah. What did
Welcome.
I say? I said something else.
all of
Wool, I
wool.
think.
All right.
Wool could
So
be yarn.
there you go. So, no, but yeah, you get what I'm saying. Anyway, you get this thread. There's even such a game, I think, that you play with kids, but you get such a mess of threads that is just impossible
Yeah.
to
And you
to
couldn't see it ahead of time. You
unravel.
couldn't say, "Oh, if we do this, then these 12 consequences will occur as a result." You couldn't have seen that. And now the consequences are you've got over 150,000 troops on the border. So it's looking like
Mm.
pretty serious. It's actually looking
But
very
okay, so hold
serious.
on. So here's something else though. Okay, so check this out. I love kind of hearing these stories and then in my mind, like trying to decipher it through the program of creation. So the US president, and we know that the news is just mostly crap and propaganda, but so the US is saying, the mainline news is, Russia's going to attack any day now. Russia's going to attack any day now.
That's
Mm.
every single
Russia's
headline
saying
is
no,
the
we're
same over and over. Yeah.
right. So Russia's saying even though they're
These
putting
aren't the
100,
headlines here, by the way, in Israel, for example. Like, so just to show that, every news has an agenda depending on where you read the news from and where the news is
Mhm.
produced.
Sure.
But that's totally not the atmosphere of the headlines in Hebrew Israeli media. The headlines are like, let's hope it doesn't happen, or something like that.
So the U.S. so
Anyways, we
even
should.
though Russia's moving troops to the border, Russia's saying no, we're not going to attack. They're moving a lot of troops to the border, but they're saying we're not going to attack.
Well,
And
they're
the
setting up
Ukraine is
field
saying,
hospitals too. It's also, what are you, just setting up a random field hospital because you don't plan on attacking? I mean, it's kind of showing a little bit of your cards too.
these people are master chess players, but the Ukraine is saying
Excellent
no,
chess players.
they're not going to attack. Russia's saying no, they're not going to attack. But because the U.S. is saying they're going to attack, it's hurting business because of all of that fuel that runs through the Ukraine. So now there's pressure to the US to say, no, don't say they're going to attack, because if you say they're going to attack, it's hurting, the big banks are saying that's hurting our business because
Yeah.
Now you got that
yeah,
whole
It's
it's
another
all
layer, man.
right.
another
Well,
layer of another ball of yarn, a whole
right.
ball
Another
of just
wool
So
thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
so if so Russia's saying no, we don't want the Ukraine to join NATO, because that basically means if the Ukraine joins NATO, if a NATO nation is attacked, the other NATO nations have to defend them. So
Yeah.
if the Ukraine were to join NATO and there's Russian troops inside of the Ukraine because of that whole eastern region and stuff, the US would be drawn into a war with Russia. So if there was, so to even make it even more complicated, why didn't, if the Ukraine should be a member of NATO, so then why not be a member of NATO? Why wait until now? Because also, if the Ukraine was a
I
member
did
of,
ask myself that question.
okay, so here's one answer, and I'm not a,
All right.
political scientist, and I'm not a historian, but just from trying
No,
to
but you
understand what's going on.
clearly went into more details than me. Then go
Try
ahead.
to understand a little bit what's going on. So the countries from so I don't know all the details, but I think that if you belong to a NATO country and if you're part of the European Union, you're allowed to move between countries.
Okay.
So if the Ukraine joins, there would be a lot of immigration, there would be a lot of people moving out of, just normal people just looking for better financial opportunities. They would move out of the Ukraine and would immigrate into other European countries. So you'd have a whole other movement of manpower.
And whatever decision is reached, either we join NATO, we join Russia, you're gonna also have a split inside Ukraine because you have people who support
Okay,
both sides.
I'm updating my analogy here. I
We're
keep the
listening.
ball of yarn. Take all those people that are all those group of children that are tied up together in that ball of yarn and put them in a Chinese shop. Chinese shop, that's how you call it?
China shop.
China shop. Thank you. Why? What's going on with my expression today?
So
Anyway,
you have this. You have now, as we explained, between the financial, so between Russia to the east, Europe to the west, the pipelines running through the two different cultures. You still have a very Russian culture in the Ukraine. Ukraine also has its own culture. You have the United States. You have all these interests. Everything is very, very tight like this. And we could, Russia is not such a prosperous nation. It doesn't have the biggest army, but they do have tons of nuclear weapons. Okay? So all eyes are kind of on this. All eyes are on this situation now, because you could have a showdown. Now, what is to the east of let's see if we could go back to the map for 1 second and even make a little more drama. If we go even more east, of course, what is east of Russia?
More Russia.
Okay.
So big.
So you have China over there. So you have China and Russia on the east, and then Ukraine in this like middle position here, and then Europe and the US to the west. So really, it's this central point. It's it's, I guess you could say the Middle East too. Israel is always like that as well. But you have these two different forces, this liberal Western European United States on one side, and this more, well, China's obviously communist, and then Russia's a little bit more, strict and conservative on the other side, and they're mixing in this one place. And I don't want to relate, like I said before, one side to Keter and one side to Malchut, but there is some. We're not going to say that Putin is the bestowing. No, it's all forces of. It's just nature.
Human ego, yeah.
Human ego. But there is, when you say that everything is inside of me, and then I look at this possible war situation and all of these forces coming together, it is a very fun exploration of what we're seeing before our eyes, how this relates to my spiritual development.
That's the question. What is it that we're seeing? That's really.
Is it just for no reason that the pipeline is running through? It's like a pipeline is also very analogous. It's like the lifeline. It's like blood, and it shows that the body is connected, and this part has to have this part, and it has to go through this part. And it's a little bit more emotional than just geographical. There's something else going on there too. That's also, we should get into that. But I want to know a little bit more about. Okay, let's go back to your first part. You said everything's inside of me. Now we just went for, I don't even know how long, talking about all the details, what's happening here, what's happening there. Okay, I feel really full of details, and I kind of forgot about the everything's inside of me part. So
yeah,
maybe let's go back a little bit.
Yeah, that's our job as Kabbalists, to always work with two pictures of reality. They seem to be contradicting, but we have to align them and try to see one program, one reality, one process of evolution. So I think the first question to ask ourselves, as I said a minute ago, is what is it that we are seeing? What are we looking at? Are we looking at people and nations and natural resources and weapons? What is it that we're seeing?
Yes,
here?
we
What
are.
is that? What is that?
Oh, okay. I would then. Okay, thank you for the counter. I would say that it definitely looks that way. It definitely appears that way.
If a bomb blew up in your okay, so for example, let's just show you the map one more time, just for fun, just so we can, because you're about to tell us that it looks like it's physical, but it's actually all spiritual. So there's a country.
He was
called
about
Ukraine.
to say that. You're right.
Yeah, I know you was. I know this guy. So here's a country called Ukraine. Here's one of the biggest cities in the Ukraine called Kiev. And if we
I could fly there. I could get on a
in,
plane and fly there if I wanted to. Okay, yeah.
if we keep zooming in, there's another famous city that happens to be in Ukraine.
Hello. Okay,
And it's called
Chernobyl. I see that.
Chernobyl.
Yeah.
So, okay,
hello,
so
Chernobyl.
Yeah, hello, Chernobyl. Everyone knows there was a nuclear meltdown there, whatever. So while you're about to tell me that everything is spiritual,
Nice try.
there are real life consequences for things that happen down here in Malchut.
No doubt.
Okay.
Doubt.
So
of course.
just make sure you
course
keep
there
that
are.
going. You keep that in your explanation
Yes.
here. Okay.
So we are. I'm not playing down what is happening at all. I'm actually playing it up. What I'm about to say is what we're looking at is only the superficial level of what's actually happening, and all of this precarious state that appears to be outside of us is happening inside of us. And that means that not only it matters, it means that it matters to each and every one of us, and that each and every one of us, whether you live in the Ukraine or Russia or in anywhere else in the world, whether you know about it more or less, you're taking part. That's what I'm saying. Because humanity is one single consciousness. That's one single vessel, one single being. What's happening in one part of it is happening everywhere. As we're seeing in our time, it's becoming so evident that even on the superficial level, even on the outside level, even in that perception of the material world where we seem detached and material, and we're separate nations and separate countries and separate beings, and we are all in our own lives, in our own things, we're seeing that there are these threads, this ball of yarn that is traveling between all of us, connecting us together into one thing. We're seeing it even in our material eyes in the 21st century. That's
But we're
what's
all
so
seeing it.
special
Everybody's seeing it.
about
The
our
news is
time.
reporting it. Everyone's seeing it. I agree that he sees that. He also sees the same thing happening over there.
Right.
You guys see it. Okay, so it's happening to all of us. So what does it mean it's inside of me?
Yes. So now we have to take it a step deeper if we want to take a Kabbalistic take on it. The program of development that develops our consciousness is gradually pushing all of the bits of consciousness into a shared reality. Meaning, we started by saying all of humanity is one thing, a single consciousness, a single being, right? But we don't feel it like that. We do not feel it like that. That's what the program of development is designed to do. Gradually, it puts us in friction. That is what's happening throughout all of human development. If you can say one thing that I think everyone who has a little bit of perspective will agree with us, is that if there's one defining character of human development throughout all of those thousands of years of development, it is that we are gradually becoming inextricably tied to each other across the entire planet. This is the one, if you did a time-lapse video of the entire human history, even just from, say, the last 4,000 years, since like the cradle of human culture, of human civilization there in Mesopotamia, take just those 4,000 years or so. What you would see in this 5-minute video, isn't that a great project, by the way? I dare you, whatever video creator.
Just need to get some
hearing
footage from
this.
4,000 years ago.
Yeah, if you, use some animation, do some of that, then move on to some live action footage. There you go. If you're out there, creative,
how old are all the pyramids?
Videographer, talk to me. Let's work on this together.
How old are the pyramids in South America and the pyramids in Egypt and all the pyramids around the world? Do you know?
Oh man, that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
No, just the age.
He loves the pyramids. I do too.
I don't have a number in mind. No.
Oh, it'd be so cool to see.
But
how all of the things develop.
They all popped up around the same time, though.
They all,
I think around 5,000 years
and it's
ago.
crazy that there's so many. I watched a couple of those pyramid documentaries. It's fascinating. You got to say it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's do a pyramid show one day.
What?
Let's do a pyramid show.
But no, like trees. We talked about the mycelium under the ground, and we talked about ants. They don't need blueprints in order to know where to build and where to go. It's a sensation. So anyway, we're not getting into that. I was just,
but you're right. The billions of years ago when mycelium developed, it developed as a network. That is, and this network, today scientists are saying, hey, you know what? It's actually covering the entire planet. It's part of the fabric of the whole biosphere. So this connection, gradual move towards interconnection, towards unbounded connection, towards complete interdependence, is a program of development that is happening in all levels of the single vessel, the single consciousness that exists. On our level of experience, it needs to become so tangible that we can feel it and feel it in our bones, so to speak. That means, and now I'm hopefully answering this question that we brought up, that means that every person, every bit of consciousness has to feel the entire thing. That means that the direction of development, the direction of the trajectory of evolution of human consciousness is to the point that every bit of this single shared consciousness that exists, every bit of it, every broken piece of it feels that it is everything else, that it is the whole. You are all of humanity. You are all of reality. You are everything there is, because this is what spiritual evolution means, that we gradually rise from our initial perception, where we are shattered bits and pieces of consciousness, which creates, it produces the feeling of the material world. The material world doesn't exist by itself outside of us. Show me one individual, one person, be it a physicist or an ordinary person, who saw matter, who investigated matter. Matter is a story that we tell ourselves exists. We have no direct access. No human being ever had any direct access to the outside reality. We only perceive through our senses. And so we don't really know what is out there. Kabbalists don't research the outside reality. They research their own vessel.
There's a quote from that Donald Hoffman used in that TED talk about reality. He quotes Galileo. Galileo said, I think that so we're talking about consciousness, but Galileo breaks it down. He says, I think that tastes, odors, colors, and so on reside in consciousness. Hence, if the living creature would be removed, all of those qualities would also
exactly
be
and Galileo, by the way, this is what 450 years ago, Galileo, 550 years ago, something like that. He's widely considered the father of modern science. And here's what's interesting: he understood
500 years ago.
It's so he and this is 500 years ago, right? This is, and Kabbalists write this a couple thousand years ago. What Galileo understood is that this whole question of consciousness, the moment you get into it, if you take it all the way, you cannot say that you're researching an outside reality. And that's the beginning points. That's just the starting point for Kabbalists.
You kept saying gradually. All right, sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead. Because I have a bunch of.
I see you. I see you could go forever, and I would sit here forever. But we have. I had a thought, and I have to interrupt you.
No, and I think I'm digressing a little bit here from the.
Okay, so I have a question.
You guys wanted to go a couple of minutes.
So I have a thought. So I think it'll help you. You kept saying gradually, and whenever you're talking about this, it's kind of like pulling me into where I'm thinking maybe I can somehow grasp that there is. Everything's inside of me, or somehow kind of feel it. But then you kept saying gradually, and we'll gradually feel, and we'll gradually get there, we'll gradually attain, and we'll gradually do something. And it's kind of a term that we throw around a lot. But at the same time, we have to look at how nature works, how we develop, as even from babies to where we are now. Everything's gradual. Nothing's really, immediate. And when we're talking about things like attaining spirituality or attaining, something great, or science or whatever, it's also, or not. Let's leave spirituality out, actually. But you want to become wise. You put yourself under someone's wing, and you're there for most of your life until they die, and then you continue on, whatever. So everything seems like this kind of like slow process. But when you talk about spirituality specifically, it seems like you have this. There's like this thought that, if I just, I don't know, think in this different way. If I change my mindset, then everything will snap, and then I'll see the world the way that I'm supposed to see it, and then it'll be working out. So when I'm hearing you, I'm kind of like doing like this practice, like, where is it? Where can I find it? What can I do? And I'm expecting this like snap to reality to where I see that reality. But what you kept saying is gradually. So apparently that's not the right approach.
Check this out. I have a quote here from today's daily lesson from that we were all in, the daily Kabbalah lesson with our teacher, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Leitman. It's a short quote. I picked it up. I'm going to translate it on the fly here because it was said in Hebrew, and I picked it up and kind of so this was said today by our teacher, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Leitman. When we discover the essence of life, we'll get to see how everything's connected to a single source and everything comes down from that source. So there's no event, no moment in life, big or small, individual or global, that is not connected to this one single goal of development that we have to achieve. It starts from our very beginning as a black point within the white light. I'm not going to explain this now, but just for those who hear it for the first time, just try to feel it. You're muted, Seth.
Just name it though. Didn't we just read it in the introduction to the book of Zohar?
Let's just say this: the white.
Just name it. Just name it. Technically, we don't have to get into it.
Say it technically. What do you mean? Because I'll
go ahead for a sec. I'll find it.
Okay. Anyway, to go back to why am I bringing up this quote? There's another short piece of it. This is from the same bit there in the lesson, just to respond to what Chris was bringing up. And that, therefore, so there's no moment in life that's not connected to this program of development that we're going through. And that's why this is not a university where you study this and that amount of years and then you finish it and you can forget about what you've learned. And it's not some work that ends after this and that amount of time, but it is a process that is continuous and endless. And that's exactly, I thought, just speaks to what you brought up. The moment you brought it up, I just, wow, that was like exactly what we heard in today's lesson. So yeah.
So what do we do then? Do you want to keep going deep about what?
No, I think we still need to connect these points between what's happening right now in our outer perception, right? This looming war, or hopefully not, between Ukraine and Russia, and
hopefully not. We should say that too. I mean, that's hopefully it's not that things just happen.
Let's explore that, Chris. While Seth is digging into the sources of Kabbalah there. Let's explore this. Why is it a good thing if this thing doesn't happen? Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Why do we as Kabbalists say that it's not a good thing? Isn't this part of the program of development as well? What's going on here?
Isn't this happening? Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so this can help us. So that single consciousness that exists to begin with had to descend. We're all parts of it, but we never felt it, right? Just like the embryo in a womb doesn't feel its own existence because it has no consciousness of itself yet. So it has to move away outside of the womb and develop outside of it in order to then get to know itself and its mother. That is what happens with the vessel of creation, the created being, that single consciousness. First, it has to be detached from the wholeness, detached from the oneness, detached from the source that created it, a source of complete, unbounded bestowal, love, connection, unity, oneness, whatever the word, the human language can describe is insufficient here. But it has to be removed from it. And that means that the vessel has to be shattered to pieces. That's why we find ourselves in this world, beginning our journey of consciousness as bits and pieces of a shattered single consciousness. But we feel just the bits, the little bits and pieces of it. So we think we are in a material world. We think we are in a material body. We think we're separated. We think everything that's outside of me doesn't belong to me. There's me and there's the outside world. There's me and there's other people. There's me and there's everything else and everyone else.
I think because that's what I feel, but yeah. Because
that's how we feel. That's our immediate sensation of the world. Our intuitive sensation of the world is that. But what happens when you start developing your consciousness? And by the way, it picks up on what's happening today in science. The deeper they go into matter, into trying to understand those little particles of matter, the more they found that there is no matter, that it's not what we thought, that there is no time, there is no space. two particles can be at two places at the same time. They can be connected and transfer information at infinite speed across the vastness of the whole universe. They discover there could be one wave function that explains the whole universe, and so on. What are they finding? They're finding that against our intuition, opposite to our intuitive sensation of the world, that we're all separate, we're actually at the deepest level, we are all one thing, one field, one consciousness. Kabbalists say that's right. Now, if you just use math, you're going to describe it with some functions and we'll keep wondering about it. If you just use philosophy, you're going to just keep wondering about it. But if you are going to make a conscious effort to connect with the other bits of consciousness that you identify as other people and try to feel each other as one, you can develop your vessel, calibrate your vessel of perception to feel that oneness. And if you do that, you're running faster than the program of development that is pushing you to get there. And that's how you eliminate wars. That's how you eliminate suffering.
So we don't want it to happen. That's how you
eliminate problem. So it's just say the conclusion. We have to, because I think we finally.
So we don't want it. So we don't want this war to happen because that is not called speeding up time. That's the opposite. We're just slowing. We're keeping up with the same pace that we have been going with.
The full integration, the full integration of all of humanity will happen one way or another.
Exactly.
We can take upon ourselves the process of development,
and it's a conscious development. It's a conscious effort. It's spiritual development. That's what it is.
That's important because we think that there is just revelation and concealment.
What do you mean?
Well, so the revelation would be like it's all one, and we're just together in unity. And there can also be that it's concealed, but there's also another piece to the whole thing, and this is pretty much relates to most of the masses in the world. You know, like, can you say that a computer is concealed from a fish? No, the computer's not concealed from the fish. The fish doesn't even know that there is something
not aware of a concealment. Yeah.
Right. Nothing, like I was 10 years old. I never, thought about Susie. And then all of a sudden, like, my love for Susie revealed, and now I can't have Susie. It's kind of concealed. Like, in order for something to be concealed, you kind of need to know what it is. Like, already concealment is already the beginning of the spiritual goal. You already know.
Knowing that something is concealed. Yeah.
Yeah. So already understanding that we're at this, if we think we're going to solve the problems, even, we're going to avoid the war, but through NATO and through the United Nations, we're not even at revelation and concealment. We're still, animals, like in this, not like the scientists.
But that's still really exciting though.
What is?
It's exciting to to even start talking about the idea that we can enter into that process. If you start feeling like, whoa, wait a second, there is something that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and not only that, everything that's happening to us is pushing us to get there. That's the beauty of the whole thing. Remember that quote we just read from the lesson, right? Every incident in life, in society, as an individual, as a person, as a global society, everything we're going through is to push us to achieve.
Hold on, everything we're going through on the degree of Malchut, like in this world,
is to rise to a higher level of reality. Exactly. Yes.
Technically, does anything else even exist?
No, the only thing that is evolving is the vessel, is the consciousness.
So we're staying in Malchut, but the more that we start to reveal the system and rise spiritually, everything here can stay just as it is, because now from up here, everything down here takes on it's something spiritual.
Until the very end.
which you'll have to
Yes.
stay tuned for our next podcast where we talk about the very end.
No, but until we need we our whole goal is to feel our whole vessel. At the moment, we feel just the whole vessel is everything that exists. It's all of creation. That is the thing that was created. It's us. And we have to feel all parts of us. At the moment, we feel just a very superficial, thin layer, but we need it because it's the basis that we start from. And from this Malchut of Malchut of Malchut of Asiya, we have to grow 125 degrees to the Keter of Keter of Keter of Adam Kadmon. And until we get there, we need the Malchut of Malchut of Malchut of Asiya. We need this experience of the material world, because otherwise we will have no vessel. We have to attain the whole of creation from the most extreme minus to the most extreme plus, from the zero revelation to 100% revelation, from 100% concealment to 0% concealment. We need this entire volume until the end.
Okay, hold on. We have the
Okay,
war
the
with
end,
the war in
we're not
Russia is
gonna go to the
important.
Yeah.
The war in Russia with Ukraine is important, but Debbie Brady, I just looked over at the chat for a second over here, which
Yeah.
sorry everyone, I forgot to look. She said you only have 5 minutes left, warning, and you didn't even answer our questions. So I don't know what to do.
I'm sorry.
The
I'm
questions.
sorry
Let's take a
in the
quick
name
look
of all
over
of us.
here on the questions.
Questions.
I'm not sure. I'm
Should we have a
scrolling, I'm
different
looking for
method?
questions.
I saw
for
one
questions?
thing-
I don't know. What should we do? about
I saw one thing that Yetzi asked earlier, which is whether consciousness needs time and space to develop. Consciousness creates time and space. There is no time and space. The time and space, the whole cosmos, the whole fabric of reality, including time, space, and motion and everything else, is created in the vessel that experiences it. Even Galileo understood it to an extent. So outside, what's outside, we don't know. Kabbalists don't even say that they know what's outside. That is what's so technically beautiful about the wisdom of Kabbalah. If you're coming from a scientific orientation, then you should really respect that. They never say we know what's outside the vessel. They only say it seems that there is something outside that's feeding the vessel with all the information that the vessel then uses to produce the picture of reality. But what is it? We don't know. It's something, we can only say it's his essence, they call it. We don't know what it is. They only deal with what they attain in their calibrated vessel of perception. And that's what we're talking about. The war that is happening right now, hopefully not, is something happening to our vessel inside our conscious experience. If we can calibrate, and it's happening in order to calibrate us, in order to change our consciousness, to raise us to a different level of consciousness where we are feeling each other as one. If we can rise to that level on our own, we don't need the war. We don't need the friction to happen in a brutal way. It can happen like different pieces getting to know each other, caressing each other, and making love to each other, instead of fighting and biting and being violent towards each other.
That sounds like something I can even
Yep.
do right now while I'm sitting here, is just think about that, kind of maybe want that to happen instead. You know, I don't know, if we're all connected and this one little piece over here sitting and wearing a bunch of blue and doing all this is thinking, you know, I wish we would develop towards the goal without having to go through that. I wish that the internality of people, that the desire of everyone would start to change so much so that they would maybe start to feel that it's that it's unnecessary, that you know, have some kind of inclination that where it's only destructive and it's just a loss for everybody. You know, if I can want other people to feel that could be good, and maybe everyone else watching also has those thoughts and those hopes. Maybe something good could maybe there's some kind of change we can invoke. Maybe. I hope. I don't want to see a war. You know, it's going to be big and bloody. and if it actually goes to war. So let's really hope that it doesn't, and hope that we can get around it.
And especially us, the people who are aware of all of this, who are seeing reality from this perspective, who are working on expanding our perception and raising our level of consciousness, we need to see ourselves responsible for for everything that happens where the world seems to be falling behind, where consciousness is not developing fast enough to avoid this press of development manifesting in a negative way. Seeing that as our responsibility and radiating that even just to each other is a big deal, because reality is what we see on the outside is just the outcomes. It's just the result. It's like shapes on a computer screen. The code is at the level of desires and intentions. That's where the program of nature is working. It's developing our consciousness to another level where all our desires interconnect into a single vessel. And yeah, I don't know. I wish Seth could play something live now, but I wouldn't want to.
I wish I remembered how to play guitar. I haven't touched the thing in like 3 months.
Okay, there's a guitar right there, but
I think I see it too.
Yeah.
Over there. It's behind
It's there. I just haven't touched it in a long time. It's
maybe next time.
Can you okay, then tell us something from your heart. How do you feel that in a way that will feel like a song?
I saw somebody write something. If these guys have been doing this for 20 years and they don't have an answer, or what do they say? They can't get the right connection. How can we? So I would say that let's look at everything the way that we're receiving it from the Kabbalists. We don't see anything in reality that it happened at once. There's a process of everything. The development of the inanimate, the development of the vegetative, the development of the animal species. We are now taking into our hands the reins of development of what appears to our eyes as billions of years of development, but it's actually an eternity. We are these simple people in the last generation who are connecting together and taking the reins of reality in our hands. It's not a process that happens all at once and overnight. It is a process of building a vessel that the light of eternity will dwell in. And it's not for a few people, it's for all of humanity. And it's for us to build something that we will feel all of that together. And each day and everything that is revealed to us in life is part of that. We don't have to wait for anything to happen. We don't have to think that I need better conditions. The whole system is giving us every single day the perfect conditions. So let's, on the level of Malchut, on the level of this world, let's live our lives as normal people the best we can. And also let's start to yearn for, just like a baby starts to yearn for something and then he becomes an adult, or he starts to talk, he starts to walk. Let's start to yearn for this other state that Asaf talked about, this where everything is connected. And in our heart, we'll start to have some kind of yearning to be in that together. And we will succeed. And ideally, we will do it without having to go through trouble on the outside, because we will run through all of these processes in our common internality together. We'll start to feel everybody more and more. We'll start to see the world change for the better. In fact, it is. Everything is actually moving in that direction. All of humanity is becoming united. We just need to start to see how it's actually happening. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Chris.
Cheers.
Thank you, Saf from the Middle East. We will see everyone again next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern, here on The Great Transition. And big hug to everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Much love, everybody. Bye-bye.
In you I see a picture of me. Through you I find my flaws. Through there's a key, a place where we can open doors. It's a hear the fire it burns, a chance to feel alive. A song from the heart, singing that love will cover our crime. To see the face of love through your eyes, together as one.